going to start in a few minutes. Did you get an email? Did you get an email from the office? Yeah. Good evening, good evening, good evening. Welcome everyone to Mount Carmel Baptist Church as we begin to have this conversation with the candidates. I would like to say at the outset just a few housekeeping items that we want to make sure that everyone has their cell phones, that you have them silenced or turned off because we do not want to interrupt things. But I also want to let everyone know that all the candidates for the two offices that we are having a conversation with the candidates, every candidate was invited. Every candidate received the same information as far as when we were going to start. And I appreciate Senator Anthony Hardy Williams for being on time, Mr. Paul Prescott for being on time, and the only candidate for state rep for the new 10th that is here and present on time is Miss Cass. I want to make sure Cass Green. So thank you, Miss Green, for being on time. That does speak volumes to me for those who are interested in the positions of which they seek, that they did not think enough to be here on time. Yeah, well, notwithstanding, but thank you. And just so we know, we're not taking any questions uh, from the floor. So, but notwithstanding, let us continue. We will follow the program as slated. Those individuals, if you are in attendance and you're not registered to vote, you can complete your online voter registration. We do have someone on site that can help you with that. Today is the last day to register to vote. May 10th is the last day to apply for the mail-in by ballot, and May 17th is the election day. Want to make sure that we also understand the significance of the midterm elections. Too often people take this as a break, but we saw most recently in the confirmation of Ketanji Brown Jackson that midterm elections matter. And so we want to make sure that we give the same amount of attention to every election, because at the end of every political decision is a human life. Amen? Amen. Let us pray. Dear Lord, we're thankful for this day and this time. We're thankful for everyone who is represented under the sound of my voice and those who are watching virtually. We pray that everything that is done in this place we call sanctuary is done out of reverence and respect, and that we're ultimately here to do the best for the people and not what's best for the prospective candidates. Amen. Amen. As we get started, we will have some opening, not necessarily remarks, but Congressman Dwight Evans from the Democratic from the 3rd District, he will come and just give some emphasis on voters' rights. And then after that, we will have Mount Carmel's own trustee and the senator of the 7th Senatorial District, Vincent Hughes, will give some remarks as it pertains to redistricting. Amen? Amen. So, Congressman?
I can take my mask off? Okay. I want to say good evening. And it is absolutely my pleasure. And I want to compliment Mount Carmel under the leadership of your minister. For just give him a hand. Yes, yes, don't be bad. Just give him a hand. And the reason I want to compliment him under his leadership, because what is taking place here is very essential. It is essential because of the fact that if we want to make a difference in our communities in terms of violence, housing, jobs, we must vote. And voting is essential. And I know you have heard that over and over again, that every election is important because your life depends on it. But I have never seen in my political lifetime, with all that we have gone through, a pandemic, we're in the middle of a war, poverty, and just the disruption that is occurring. And if you think about it, because specifically, I will say because of black people, is the reason Joe Biden is president. And the reason Harris is vice president is because black people elected. And because the first time a black woman, first time ever from a historical perspective, ever was nominated is on the United States Supreme Court. Now, let's put that combination together. Black women have been essential important, more so than the Tony Williams and the Vince Hughes and the Curtises. They've been in the forefront. Well, there's no question, I immediately take myself in. But the fact of the matter is, black women have been essential. And that's not to be taken for granted. So as the pastor said, I will give a few words. I want to put that in context of how that affects the 3rd Congressional District. The 3rd Congressional District goes from Cheltenham down to Broad and Mifflin. There's 750,000 people in the 3rd Congressional District. The 3rd Congressional District is the backbone of all the congressional districts in the state. And the reason I said it is because President Biden, if you look at the numbers, this congressional district, more than any congressional district in the nation, 435 of them, gives you the greatest voting performance of every congressional district in the nation. Now, what does that mean? Let's connect that. Tony and Vince and Curtis knows that how you get in a position is something called seniority. And seniority is the element that allows you to get things done. I am the 5th black congressman in this state. Nix was the 1st. 5th. Ways and Means is the only committee in the Constitution. Charlie Rangel, who was from New York, was the only person to be chairman of this committee. I am the first African American in the state of Pennsylvania to be on Ways and Means. The very same committee that, you know that little thing called the American Rescue Act, which Senator Hughes, Senator Williams, Councilman Jones, 1.9 trillion, 1.9 trillion, which made a difference in schools, made a difference in commercial areas, made a difference in small businesses. So when Curtis and the city was trying to pass city contracts, the city workers, SEPTA, the teachers, that was done as a result of the money that was given from the federal government. Building Back Better, though it passed the House, it didn't pass the Senate. In terms of the child tax credit, poverty was at a range of 26%. It reduced it by 40%. Poverty is the issue in this country. It is the issue. So the American Rescue Act, Building Back Better. So where are we today? We're at a crossroad. We have a challenge. And I know I hear all the news, and particularly being in the position I'm in, they say, we don't have a chance to get back to the majority. Now, Vince and Tony know about that. Curtis don't know much about majority. Understand majority. It allows me to be on the Ways and Means Committee. I said to you there are only 2 Philadelphians on the Ways and Means Committee. 2. And the fact of the matter, when Vince, Tony called, my ability to deal with affordable housing, which money that goes to the Pennsylvania Finance Agency. So those things can only be done if I'm in the majority. I was in the minority for 2 years when that other guy was president. Since I'm in church, we try not to talk about things like that, right? Right, man?
Right.
We don't talk about that. Exactly. So being in the position that I'm in is a result of what the pastor started off talking about, voting. Now, this is a primary, which is internal discussions. Some people win, some people lose, but the fact of the matter is we need not to get caught up into not understanding the importance. We have a governor's race. We don't want to become Florida, and we don't want to become Texas. Anybody know Florida and Texas? How that state is run and operated? If you do not have, Vincent Hughes or Tony Williams can tell you about not having the ability to influence. A governor said, Vincent, I never forget he said this. He said, the question is, how did you use the power when you had it? So that's when Curtis in his position, when he talks about, what's that playground called? Tuffany? Tusky. Tustin, okay. I'm going to get there, Tuskin. The ability for Curtis to do what he needs to do for that playground, which makes a difference for the young people, is because being in the majority. So I'm expressing to you for my ability to get things done. For example, giving money to the black doctors, doing things for 52nd Street, doing things for the man, doing things for the youth basketball league. All those things, I wish I could say they was just in the back, but I want you to understand, because of you are the important part to this equation. You are the important parts again. So as we get through this primary, Tony and Vince and Curtis and Pastor, you two and all, we need to be nonstop. We need to be every day. We need all of you as parishioners. We need Mount Carmel Church to be energized, because they said black people are not energized. You're not charged up. That's what they say. They tell us you're not charged up. You don't seem to have the passion. So we need to change that. So I'm glad the pastor is doing this conversation, because we need to go house by house, block by block, and we need to talk to people. We need to talk especially to our young people. We need to get our young people engaged. We need to get them to understand that the level of violence and destruction that is occurring, it shouldn't be accepted. So I'm going to close with this. Probably never in my lifetime have I ever seen such a more challenging time. This is not a game. It's not a joke. Too many people are dying. Pandemic on one hand, violence on the other hand. If you look at the effect that it's having specifically on the black community, pandemic and violence. So I want to thank the pastor for allowing me just a few minutes to talk about my role in the 3rd Congressional District, working with people like him, working with these elected officials, and working with you. Again, thank you very much.
Thank you. So, before Senator Hughes comes to give remarks on redistricting, I would like to acknowledge the presence of Councilman Curtis Jones, who is the councilman for the 4th Councilmatic District, which includes Mount Carmel Baptist Church and a number of our members. So thank you for being in attendance. Senator Hughes, also Trustee Hughes, if you can come give just some remarks and highlight the importance of what redistricting means and what it means to have the new 10th, because there has to be something in that name in and of itself.
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you, Pastor. Good to see all the Mount Carmel people, right? Good to see the non-Mount Carmel people, all right? Thank you for hosting this. For those who are not familiar with the tradition of this church, this is not unusual for Mount Carmel. Be real clear about this. This is not unusual for Mount Carmel. We've had presidents, vice presidents, congresspeople, U.S. senators, cabinet officials, all those individuals who have an impact, governors, wannabe governors, all right? All those individuals who have an impact, we've had them in this church. Reverend Jackson, on every time he campaigned for president, was here in this church, but more importantly, he was here before then and has been here after then. Reverend Pastor Moore, you remember when Reverend Al Sharpton was here.
Yes.
We had all kinds of individuals here in this church connecting with the Mount Carmel community and the surrounding community about the importance of civic engagement, about what impact that they can and we can have on the lives of the people that we represent, we minister, we serve, we connect with. So, thank you for continuing this tradition, Reverend Moore. Thank you very much. On redistricting, and I'm going to take a complicated conversation and make it simple. But the folks in this room and the folks watching on whatever platform they're watching on already understand it. 10 years ago, first of all, as we all know, every 10 years we got to do a census, and every 10 years as a result of that census, we got to redraw the lines for legislature, for city council, for the state house, the state senate, for Congress, all right? And 10 years ago, on the legislative side, we had I'm not going to call it corrupt, but we had a very unbalanced process. Very unbalanced process that allowed for one group to dominate the drawing of the lines in the state house and the state senate. And so consequently, as a result of that, we wound up with, if you will, 30 Republican senators and 20 Democratic senators. All right? Just generically. And the same was the case in the House of Representatives, a very unbalanced process. That was 10 years ago. Well, we responded to that reality. We all stepped up. We all engaged. And we asserted ourselves in that 10-year period. And 2 years ago, we changed the dynamic for the drawing of those lines because we changed the Supreme Court elections in Pennsylvania, and they impacted on the lines. And now we have a much more balanced reality and a much more balanced opportunity in Pennsylvania to elect legislators and senators representing the communities that they serve. We can change the balance now that we have much more equitable lines. And as we know, in Harrisburg, as is the case in most states, it is the legislature that makes the laws for criminal justice, or the lack thereof. It is the legislature. In fact, across the country, there are about 1.2 million people in state prisons. There's only about 250,000 people in federal prisons. There's about 500,000 people in local prisons, in state counties, in city and county prisons. So the state makes the law. The state makes the law on voting. The state makes many laws on housing and education, especially in the education space. So these legislative lines are important. Who's in Harrisburg representing you are important because it is at the Harrisburg level where a lot of these determinations are made. Now, as it gets to the new reality in Philadelphia, the new reality in West Philadelphia especially, the new lines were drawn for the legislature by a reapportionment commission. They drew the new lines and they gave more balance. In that process, by giving more balance, more legislators, or the opportunity to elect more legislators of the African-American persuasion, all right, was created. And that's cool, because we had been underrepresented in this process for decades. Now we have the opportunity. In that opportunity, was drawn a new district in West Philadelphia, the 10th Legislative District. Now, that may be uncomfortable for some because now you got to find, well, who's my rep now? Who's going to represent me? Who's going to, there's been a lot of change. There's been a new district dropped into West Philadelphia, all right? And so that's what campaigning is for, to get comfortable and to meet these individuals who are going to represent you. From the global perspective, it's an ad. It's an ad because we get additional representation in communities who have lacked representation by design for decades. So that's where we are right now with the new setup, with the redistricting process. That's how everything has played itself out. What I would say is this: your vote matters. Your vote matters. Take this message, take the information that you're going to hear tonight and spread it. Pass it on. You all are leaders because you're here in this room. You all are leaders who you're watching on whatever platform you're watching. You all are leaders. Don't let this information just reside with you. Pass it on. Spread it around. Make sure that other folks hear it as well. We have more power than we realize. We have more power than we realize.
Exactly.
We have more power than we realize. We must assert ourselves in this process. And as the congressman said, we asserted ourselves 2 years ago. That's why change has occurred. We must assert ourselves now. Let's deny the pundits the opportunity to say that they're right and there was a downturn. Let's say that they were wrong. Let's prove them wrong. We can do it, and it happens in rooms just like this. So, Pastor Moore, thank you. And to my church family, thank you very much. So good to see everybody.
Thank you. Again, thank you to both Senator Hughes and Congressman Dwight Evans for taking time out of their schedules to come by and speak with us. As we move on to the conversation now, I want to ask that each candidate will be given 90 seconds to introduce themselves. So you can give your name, the position you're running for, the position you're seeking, and why someone should cast their vote for your campaign for you to represent them. So we'll start off and we'll go from my right, your left, start off with Senator Anthony Williams, and then we'll move down over to the state reps candidates.
And I think you want us to be, I'll sit down, I'll take the mic and I'll just pass it down. If that's what you want us to do. Okay, what do y'all want me to do? They're telling me to stand up. Yeah, no problem. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Mount Carmel, and thank you for having me here. I appreciate that. Certainly the pastor, all of you that organized. My name is Anthony Hardy Williams. I'm State Senator for the 8th Senatorial District, which is right across Market Street. For some, this is about the election cycle and about getting elected. For me, it's a continuing relationship between my neighbors, my neighborhood, and community. You know, I was here before I was elected. I grew up here, I live here, and I'll be here after, I serve my time. The reality is for some, it's about learning about what that district needs. For me, it's about responding to the demands that people have placed upon me. Southwest Philadelphia has always been a place of challenge. So whether I'm fighting not just about gun regulations, but for money to combat, $45 million, a historic amount of money in the state budget for the first time being spent on community groups is a part of what I've done. DAP, Diversity Apprenticeship Program, breaking down the building trades so that they allow black folks to be in a way that they haven't been before. The environment, when people don't think black folks are concerned about the environment, the #1 polluter was in my district, the refinery which burnt down. But I've worked with city council, state reps to make sure Hillco has a clean environment. So for me, tonight really is a conversation about the things I'm doing, the things I'm going to continue to do, and the fight for people who need a fighter. With all due respect, it's not a time for people who learn on the job. It's not time to gain experience. I'm the Democratic whip of the caucus who works directly with the governor and across the aisle to deliver millions of dollars for the overlooked communities of Southwest Philadelphia, and I'm proud to do that. Thank you very much.
Right, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Pastor at Mount Carmel Baptist Church, for having me tonight. My name is Paul Prescott. I'm running for State Senate in the 8th Senate District. I'm the son of an immigrant from Barbados who came to this country to be a public school teacher. And long before I ran for office now, I've been fighting for years on these issues that are of fundamental importance to ordinary working people in this city and in this state. And I began teaching in Philadelphia's public schools in 2015. And there's a lot of reasons I decided to run for office, but I think first and foremost was seeing and experiencing the absolute crisis that's happening in our public schools and by extension happening with our youth. And the kind of disinvestment we're seeing in our public schools is the same kind of disinvestment we're seeing in all areas of life. I mean, put simply, things are getting worse and worse for the average working person in Philadelphia and in this state, over and over again. And we can't keep going down this same path and expect a different kind of result. And, you know, as I've been knocking doors on this campaign, whether I'm in Southwest Philadelphia, South Philadelphia, Delaware County, I keep hearing the same message. A lot of these problems, sadly, are not new to people. But what they feel right now is that they've never remembered a time where it was this bad and seemed this hopeless. Most parents and grandparents I talk to believe that we are in a moment where their children are going to have a worse life than they did. They're afraid their children are going to have a worse education, worse job opportunities, more likely to be a victim of gun violence than they were. And so we need to turn this around, and we need someone who is a fighter for what Philadelphia needs. Thank you.
Brown?
Good evening. I'm State Representative Amon Brown. I currently represent the 190th Legislative District, which is the majority of West Philadelphia. Like it was mentioned, this is my first term. And we got a lot done. We brought back millions of dollars to West Philadelphia. We helped tens of thousands of constituents in our district and thousands of people outside our district. Our district office is on record for producing record numbers, helping constituents with every single issue, whether it's state-related, city-related, or federally related. We are going to continue to bring back the needed resources that are going to help you today and in the future. For example, some of the money that we brought back to West Philadelphia was to install cameras, free cameras. This was a program that we created. It wasn't difficult. We created the grant program, and we got it awarded, and now hundreds of families in West Philadelphia have free security systems, cameras that they can see from the phone. They can plug it up to their TV, hook it up to their TV, and things of that nature. So I am running for re-election to represent West Philadelphia, and with the new addition of the Center City portion and the entire 24th Ward, which is Mantua. We have a lot of work to do, and it is not going to be easy. And for those who know me, know that I'm willing to stand on the X and take tough hits for my community. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Next up, Ms. Cass Green.
Hear me? My name is Cass Green. Thank you, Pastor, for having me at Mount Carmel, for inviting us this evening. We feel blessed to be here this evening. So I am a resident of Mill Creek. I am not a career politician, but I am a career servant. I've been working in West Philadelphia primarily over the last 20 years at different agencies, one of which was People's Emergency Center. I worked there as their director of community outreach and partnerships and did a lot of work in West Philadelphia's Promise Zone, which is a part of the new 10th District. I was part of making sure that the Drexel Neighborhood Promise Grant was dispersed within our community in an equitable fashion. And also what happened was, after my work at PEC, I was actually recruited to come to Kensington. And a lot of folks thought I was pretty crazy to go to Kensington, but I have a different view of what poverty, oppression, and just the social inequities look like across the city now. So going to Harrisburg for me is not going for myself personally, but it's about going for the village. and standing up for what's right and what's just and what needs to happen now. So I just ask that you consider my campaign messaging, which is about new district and new possibilities. I feel like that we're really at a pivotal point after experiencing crises such as COVID and the gun violence that's going on, that we actually are in position right now for such a time as this to make change that's going to impact our communities for generations to come. So thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Next up, Ms. Sajda Blackwell. Did I pronounce your name correctly?
You did a very great job,
Okay,
Pastor.
thank you.
My name is Sajda Blackwell. Everyone knows me as Purple. I am running for the new state, to be your state representative in the new House District 10 because my people asked me to run. I'm running to do the things that we are currently already doing. My nonprofit currently has the only active town watch patrol in West Philadelphia. Why? Because we are tired of seeing the bloodshed of our babies in the streets, and we decided not to wait on anyone like our state representatives or our mayors or anyone to help us. We know that we have the answers and we have the solution. So I will continue to fight our fight that we are currently fighting in these streets, talking to the shooters and to the victims about real change, not now, but right now. I am fighting to fight poverty, as we do already right now. People started feeding our neighborhoods and our neighbors during the pandemic, and we started and did not stop. We currently feed over 2,000 residents every other Saturday on the corner of 52nd and Locust. When we get to be into the State House, the state representative, we will continue to address poverty on the front lines, not now, but right now. And I am here as your sister in community because I know what we need. I am a wife, I am a mother, and I am a community actionist. And I'm not talking about talking about the work. We are talking about doing the work. And I will continue to do the work in Harrisburg as I am doing now in the streets for my people. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Next up, we will, each candidate will be given an opportunity to answer the same exact question. And the first question is going to be presented to Senator Williams, and then we will go down in the same order, and then when the next question, we're going to come back kind of like in a reverse. The first question is this. Given all of the racial disparities and inequities in healthcare, how do we address the racial disparities in our healthcare and wellness?
Several levels. One, we need to have more people of color in the industry of healthcare delivery. And that doesn't just mean doctors, it doesn't mean nurses. It means literally people who are in clinics. When I was a kid, one of the delivery folks was a person who was not a medical person, but they were part of our community. So the manner in which we're delivering healthcare has to change in America. Also, the manner in which we reimburse. Unfortunately, people in my district, depend upon a sort of insurance from the government, which is not necessarily the most competitive. And so we need to make sure we continue to make demands upon the insurance process through the governor, through the General Assembly, and frankly, in the primary, it's really not the discussion, but in the fall, we're going to have to make a demand that those folks who are most in need get first in line. And so the manner in which we are reimbursed, the folks who are involved in delivering health care are very significant in the process. But most important, the institutions which are in Philadelphia. Philadelphia has I think one of the largest populations of medical delivery systems in the United States. The delivery between black and brown folks in those institutions are about as big as the Arizona Canyon. The reality is that there has to be a connection between what they're doing in terms of science, research, but most importantly, community on the ground, and frankly, turning the framework and the narrative around in terms of relationship between those who are being murdered in the streets and those that they think that they're trying to save on a surgeon's base. The whole distance in between has to change significantly. If we do that, then the standard of healthcare will go up, and frankly, the ability for those folks who are most adversely affected by it will turn around.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Paul Prescott, the same question. Do you need me to repeat the question?
No, I'm all right.
Okay, good.
So our healthcare system is designed to profit, health insurance companies and pharmaceutical companies. And Black and brown communities are disproportionately poor and working class and bear the burden of this healthcare system designed for private profit. So we need to do things like, fight to lower prescription drug prices, expand Medicaid drastically. And when it comes to having more people of color in the delivery of healthcare, this is also an education issue. The student loan burden is falling most on Black people, especially Black women. And it's going to have a hard time diversifying this industry when you have to go in hundreds of thousands of student loan debt to be a doctor or a nurse or any other kind of healthcare provider. So we have to think about this in connection with making higher education truly affordable for everyone. And individual health, healthy style choices are not just about an individual. We have to give people the resources to actually lead healthy lives. And that covers everything from eliminating food deserts to improving the school, the lunches we feed our students. A lot of my students describe it as prison food. You can't really disagree with them. And finally, we can't allow situations like Hardeman to happen again. Here's a public hospital serving disproportionately Black and brown people, was closed on the whims for a developer. So the state has an obligation to fully fund and support our public hospitals so that everyone can truly get the health care they deserve.
State Rep Brown, do you need the question repeated or are you good?
Yes, please.
How do we address the racial disparities in our health care and wellness?
First off, I would like to start with something that happened personally in my life. I was out doing some constituent services in the community, and a senior came up to me and said, Representative Brown, I want to thank you so much for all that you do. But she said, particularly for making sure that the building that I live in gets fresh produce every single week for the last 2 years. And I'm like, oh, no problem. And she said, you don't understand how much money it saved me. And now I was able to afford my prescription because I didn't have to decide between filling my refrigerator or getting my prescription. Mm-hmm. That's what we're facing. Like really think about that. So you never know what you do and how much is impacting someone. So when she told me that, it let me know that I'm doing the right thing. Ongoing, giving back to my community, and not even thinking about the connection to being able to afford your prescription. So I would like to continue to work toward eliminating these high prescription costs and Medicare and stuff like that. And then two, I'm a numbers guy. If we look at the population, it's in Philadelphia, the Black community, we say we have 1.6 million people here. And then you look at the zip codes where the Black constituents are not frequent at the hospitals. That's where we need to invest. That's where we need to invest the most money. Do this the same way we knock on doors and campaign for the smallest thing. We need to knock on doors and make sure people are seeing the doctors. And that's where we need to invest our state and federal funds. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Green, do you need me to repeat the question?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So the inequities in healthcare. So I have a couple of ideas about that. So one in particular is that, first of all, the Black Doctors Consortium is something that we had to celebrate during a time when it was a very critical area. So investing in more agencies and initiatives such as that. Another thing is, and I've been told this by constituents, that although we build these beautiful, large university-run hospitals and mega medical centers, a lot of times there are barriers there for folks who are intimidated by the parking, being able to access technology, and do some more investment in community-centered health and programs such as community health worker programs, making sure that our folks are educated and have opportunity to raise up their, just not their health, but their natural way of living, and also make it affordable. Also, I just want to say that we also have to consider how health translates into affordable housing. Just for an example, on 40th and Market, they're trying to displace 70 families that actually rely on the health institutions in their immediate area so that they're accessible. So it's all about accessibility, it's about investment, and also the last but not least is for seniors who Medicaid does not supply the basic needs for them, which is like dentures and eyeglasses and hearing aids. That definitely needs some reform so that we don't have people who get to the end of their lives that have to sacrifice the quality of life because they're not reasonable resources available for them for our community. Thank you.
So in regards to healthcare and where we are, I have to say that it's not that our people don't want to go to the hospital, it's that when they get there, there are extremely long lines in the hospital, that the wait times are extremely traumatic for people when they do go to the hospitals. So those disparities are ones that we need to address immediately so that when we need care, we can get care. One thing that I really want to stress to my people is that the Medicare and Medicaid system needs to be reformed right now. Many people don't even know that when we reach the end of age cycle in our lives, if you should have a trauma, which many of us do, a stroke or break a hip, and you need to have a home health care aide, or you need to go to a rehab or a nursing home, if you're not broke enough, you have to sell all your assets to become broke enough to get care. That needs to change because it's wrong. When you are not broke enough, you have to learn something called generational wealth that is ripped away from you. Because how are you going to pass along anything to your babies and to your grands if you have to sell it all just to get care? That's wrong. So when I get into Harrisburg, we're going to address these issues and reform a system that takes our dignity away when we reach the end of life cycle. We're all going to get there. And many people don't know about this until you actually go through it. That's far too late. And not only they want to make sure you're broken up, they want to make sure that when you sell your assets, you did it in 5 years before you needed the care. But we don't know about this. It's wrong. And we need to change it right now. Thank you.
I want to thank all the candidates for your passionate responses to healthcare and the disparities as it relates to racial inequities. As we move on to the next question, I would like to at least highlight the fact that Philadelphia Sheriff Rochelle Bilal is here. Which takes us into our next question. The candidates will answer the questions in the following order: Brown, Green, Blackwell, Prescott, Williams. And this is a question, which is a very important question at the top of everyone's news station just about every night. What gun restrictions or creative ways or new ideas can be presented from a legislative standpoint to address the issue of gun violence?
Well, gun restrictions. I believe that we're currently allowed to purchase too many at one time or per month. I think that we need to limit the amount of firearms that any one individual can purchase. 2, being creative. The young people in our communities are the majority of the folks committing the crime. There's about 5 or 6 young people who attended a job fair that I hosted in West Philadelphia, 40th and Market, and 3 of those guys, of the 6 who applied, they're currently working in Washington County. 2 of them have criminal records, and 1 of them still has an ankle bracelet on. They're making about $70,000 a year with a 401k, and they don't want to come back. We showed them something different. We need to show our young people that just because you got tangled up in a situation in the past doesn't mean your life is over. When I was arrested and I was in CFCF, looking out the window, I thought my life was over. But when I came home, my support system, they said, no, this is not the end for you. and I wanted more, and I kept working, and I kept working. So we need to show our young people that you can be somebody. I stand here today as a young black man from West Philadelphia with a high school diploma, and I represent the communities that I grew up in. And that's what we need to show our young people in Philadelphia.
So I'm just finishing up a project in Kensington. It was a Department of Justice grant called Innovations in Community-Based Crime Reduction. And so I was able to spend the last 3 years working with community in one of the worst communities in Philadelphia that has the opioid, homeless, largest drug corners, making the most money in the city, right? Or maybe almost the country. And so we really had to work with community to start to see how community could impact community without further criminalizing our neighbors, our children, and our community. So safety starts on the block, on the ground, and in the neighborhood. And how can we do that within ourselves so that we don't go and further the for-profit system that has been getting rich off of our communities, off of our culture, and off of our neighborhoods. So first, I believe that one of those things that we can do around gun violence is start with our children in school and start to educate them about knowledge of self, also about the great resources that they come from, and also give them back their community pride. And I work with 28 young adults who were children when they came to me at age 14, but now they actually work in nonprofits right next to me and are getting other young people involved in the work in the community so that we can heal, take care of, and save ourselves. Another thing that we worked on strategically was getting police to understand what community policing is and how we can come together and do that, and then making sure that we increase trauma-informed opportunities in our communities so that we can heal, recover, and be safe.
In regards to gun violence, currently our current state representative has a bill on the House floor, 1587, that encouraged not only that we address gun violence by locking up all of our young people with guns, but we also give them a mandatory minimum to stay in jail for 5 years plus for having those guns, no matter the circumstance. That's wrong. We need to focus on restorative justice practices and make Philadelphia a restorative justice city, which means that we, the community, determine what needs to happen with our young people who carry guns. There's a difference between a felon who has carried guns and assaulted and killed somebody than a child who is right now scared for their life because they're scared of getting shot when they come home from school. So that child should not have to go to jail for 5 years because he made the wrong decision to have a gun, as my opponent has proposed, and with the support of the Republican Party. But instead, we need to learn what restorative justice means and how we, the community, determine what we're going to have our children go to jail for. Or if instead of going to jail, if we're going to reform them by showing them the right way, by educating them on what actually happens when you fire a gun. These kids don't know. They think they're home playing Fortnite, right? They're living life, living art. They're art, so we need to teach them the laws. We need to say, hey, if you carry this gun and you shoot this person, this is how many years you're going to get. This is when you're going to go to jail, not just lock them up. That's the wrong answer. That's why the Democrat that supported his bill pulled out of his bill. That's why the Republicans who pushed his bill had to table the bill. So we need reform, we need restorative justice. And we need to learn what the restorative justice practices are. And we need not to lock up our babies, but to educate them and heal them from this trauma.
There is no one magic solution to this problem. I mean, this problem, what we're seeing happening in our streets, is a result of decades and after decades of disinvestment. So that's first. So there needs to be a comprehensive approach. And I think there are short-term things we can do and long-term things. And I think on the short term, there are very basic things like we got to get control of this ghost gun situation. We got to coordinate at the state level with the Attorney General to do it. We have to coordinate more with city officials on basic things like our street lights working? Are we taking care of abandoned and vacant lots? Things like that can be done without a lot of money, you know, and not a lot of energy. Getting creative with our trade unions, putting on workshops for youth, for job programs, especially in the summer. Again, doesn't take a lot of money and effort to do those sort of things. But then more long-term, again, this is a result of decades of disinvestment. We need to bring more, I mean a lot more, sustainable revenue coming into Philadelphia, because when people's basic needs are met, you're not going to see this level of gun violence.
I'm sorry. Hold on. So people with your cell phones, because I'm listening for a distinct sound to let the candidates know their time is up. So if you have an alarm on your phone that's ringing, I need you to silence that, because I want to make sure that I'm being fair, because I may have cut some people's time off thinking that it was the time was up. So are you finished? Yeah. So if you're so yeah, I just want to make sure I'm fair to everyone. That's all. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, on the last point, again, more sustainable revenue to the city. And that means we have to stand up to the wealthy people and interests in the state that are not paying their taxes while our taxes are going up, because we're losing billions of dollars of revenue coming to Philadelphia, again, to fund the things that people need. When they have good public schools, good jobs, good housing, good health care, you are not going to see this level of violence. So in the long term, we have to fight for that to really go big if we're going to, create a much better future for us all. Thank you.
Senator Williams.
Appreciate all the things that are said, but I think the question was about what are we going to do? And I don't know about you, but I grew up in Southwest Philadelphia when gangs were the #1 killer of black men in America before the Crips and Bloods. And so while I like to talk about the things we can do and legislation and bills and things like that, the truth is, what are we going to do? The first thing that I have done is make sure that illegal guns are now tracked in Pennsylvania to the tune of about $5 million every year. Illegal Gun Task Force, which is tracking down ghost guns across Philadelphia today. The last time you read the newspapers, about 2 weeks ago, it was a large bust, came from that task force, which I was the person who created the pilot in my district. The other thing is to make a demand upon the General Assembly. Understand, there are 4 black people in the General Assembly and the Senate. The rest are white. Most don't live in communities like ours, so they're nice people. They say all nice things like fix poverty and all kinds of stuff. They don't do a damn thing about it. So my position is, the reality is this. I wrote a letter to the governor. The last time a father was murdered in front of his son, 5 blocks from the YMCA, I asked for the governor, along with the Attorney General, to come to Philadelphia to meet with us. We wrote a letter, 22 Democrats, of which the majority signed on to tell the governor we need to make guns a problem in Pennsylvania. He signed the letter, created what they call a task force in Pennsylvania. From that, there was a blueprint. $45 million is not going to University of Penn to study the problem like it doesn't exist for the last 50 years. It's now coming to community groups in my neighborhood. I understand who the activists are. I know who the shooters are. And what we need to do, with all due respect, is anybody who's up here needs to take their suit jackets off and do what I do after 5 o'clock, when it's dark in the neighborhood. Show up with the shooters in the street, talking about hope and promise, because I got out, so can they.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. So the next order of questions will be answered in the following order: Green, Blackwell, Brown, Williams, Prescott. And the question is regards to education, and we do have a new superintendent that's coming into the city for the next academic school year. We all know that there are achievement gaps based on socioeconomic backgrounds and based on race. We are not here to argue charter school versus public schools or things of that nature, okay? So, because education is education, children have to learn. So what should state government do to provide an equitable, quality education for all children, pre-K through 12th grade, through the entire state of Pennsylvania?
So, I'm sorry, I keep saying so, right? Really, you know, education is near and dear to my heart. I'm very passionate about it. I also started my own nonprofit, which is called Mill Creek Community Partnership. And we spent a lot of time in the schools working face to face with the children, particularly in the schools in West Philadelphia. And we've heard from the students' mouth, like, why do you come here? Why do you come to a place that's broken, that's falling apart, where it's nasty and it smells? Like, what would even make you come here and do something and try to help us? And that's coming from children who are in the 5th, 6th, and 7th grade are saying that about their environment. So we know clearly that environment plays a critical part of learning and excelling and having hope. So first thing is we do need to bring that fair funding bill into play so that there is investment in our schools in the city, just like they are in the main line. Many of us have already been to the main line. We know how they look. We know how they function. We know how the teachers are invested too. I want to just highlight that I am endorsed by the teachers union, and to hear the stories about how they're spending their meager paychecks on bringing in supplies to our schools so that our children can learn. We also need to invest more in early childhood education so that the family and our children can start to grow from when they're 0 to 8. That's the critical period of education needs to be primary in place, and so that they have alternative ways, not for just our children to learn, but even children with autism and special needs, so that we can all elevate collectively and build up our communities so that our children have a path forward.
The first thing that we need to do is break the school to prison pipeline. We need to get rid of it now. We do that by educating our children with financial literacy across Pennsylvania. We need to put financial literacy into our schools from pre-K to 12th grade, meaning we need to teach them money. We need to teach our babies money right now. So we teach our babies how to budget, how to invest, and how to balance a checkbook. Now, they won't be shooting and killing each other because over money later. If we took a step forward and made sure that our parents had the right education, that the grandmothers who are taking over the children because the parents are no longer there, that they have the proper education and support, then we can then build up our school system to actually make money for themselves. We can educate. We have to educate with financial literacy right now. When I get into the State House, God willing, I will be bringing a financial literacy program with me, ready-made, that's already being taught in Delco. There's no reason why our children in Philadelphia should have this deficiency. There's no reason why this should be happening. We have to change the narrative right now. Also, in the state right now, they give about 33% towards the education budget for everybody in Pennsylvania, right? But we do know that there is quite currently an inequity, an imbalance in the educational system. So why don't we change it from the state level to say, we understand we have 33%, but we need to make sure that these schools who are dealing with asbestos and don't have the proper learning and still don't even have books, but papers, will actually get the tools that they need to the right schools that are right now having the deficiencies. Thank you. Sorry for going over.
No, you're good.
First, which I think we all agree, is that we need to fully fund our schools, whether it's public, charter, whatever it is. We need to fully fund them like today. And then I think that we need to evaluate each and every school that's in the city, well, in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and identify what the issues are and address those issues head on. Don't put it in a plan 5 or 10 years from now. We just got all of this federal money from the government, and how much of it got spent in our schools? Not much at all. So we need to invest the money in the schools that need it most. We have 10 councilmatic districts. We have a large city, a lot of students. We need more help up top. Me personally, one superintendent isn't enough. It's too many schools, too many staff to deal with. We need to support the administration. Thank you.
Senator Williams.
Thank you. So there was mention of funding formula. For those who don't know, there's a formula by which your tax dollars go to Harrisburg, and most of it does not come back to us. So we've been debating this, and it's in the courts right now for review to make sure that it comes back to us. But I want you to be very clear. Even when it does come back to us, the formula which is designed only gives us about 10% of the new money, so it's not enough money. So the first thing we need to do is correct that with a General Assembly that's reflective of those of us who are demanding, whether it's rural Pennsylvania or urban Pennsylvania, all of us are underfunded across the board. So frankly, we actually need that money. The other part is to support the plan that the Democrats are supporting in the Senate of Pennsylvania. We have more surplus than we've ever had in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, so we can easily fully fund public education across Pennsylvania wherever you live, and we should make that demand in this election cycle. The other thing we also need to do is when this superintendent shows up, he shouldn't show up with a house of cards and a community divided. He needs to have all of us, wherever we stand on public education, we should be unified around the fact is the system does not fairly fund every school. Let us be honest. High school in West Philadelphia doesn't get the same as the money at Central. People don't want to talk about that. So when we send the money, I want to see how you spend the money. I also want to see who's instructing our children. The studies show smaller class size, absolutely correct. Black and brown teachers. We have fewer black and brown teachers in the public system than we have ever had since I was a child in this system. We have to make demands from Harrisburg, but we also have to get it right in Philadelphia. Thank you.
I'll certainly echo what everyone else has said with the fair funding formula, spending the existing surplus that the state government has is a must. But also, like I said with the other issue, we need to get more revenue sources. How come the University of Penn has an endowment that grew from $14 billion to $20 billion over the course of the pandemic and pays no property taxes? We can't allow that to continue. Why are we giving Comcast, a multi-billion-dollar corporation, property tax breaks in this city? So we can't be afraid to go after, because that is billions of dollars of revenue our schools are losing out on. And this is not, some people say this is throwing money at the problem. This is essential for what schools need. We know what works. And this is the other thing, listen to teachers, which is part of why I wanted to run. Teachers are identifying the problem, counselors are identifying the problem, and no one is listening. We know we need this money for small class sizes. How many schools I've taught in where there's no after-school programs? They're cutting career technical education. And you want to talk about school-to-prison pipeline. If a kid cannot afford to go to college, you cut out the CTE program. They have no pathway to a good trade job where you don't need a college education. What do we expect is going to happen? So we need to find, beyond the fair funding formula and existing surplus, which I totally support, more revenue sources, and that is going to require being willing to stand up to very wealthy and powerful interests that are really preventing this all from happening.
Thank you to all of the candidates for their responses. As we prepare to go into the next set of questions, I would like to acknowledge that Tracy L. Gordon, the Register of Wills for the Clerk of the Orphans Court, is here, as well as candidate James Wright from the 188th Legislative District is also here. So the next question will be answered in the following order: Blackwell, Cass, Brown, Williams, and Prescott. And the question is around housing and homelessness. What moves or steps should the state be taking to close the gap between homelessness, the empty houses that exist, and affordable housing? Do you feel that taking a look at the PA state inheritance tax would prevent so many houses from being lost due to the inability to afford the taxes? And I can repeat the question.
Do I get enough time to answer that? So what we need is, again, knowledge. We need to educate our families on what a will is from the state level. When you purchase a house, we should be educating our people and our families about what tangled titles are and how not to get your family into a tangled title. Meaning, for example, if you have a will, you can dictate what happens to your property when you pass away. However, 90% or too many of our of the community does not have a will, but they own houses. When you own a house and you don't have a will, it can easily be caught up into a tangled title because it can't be left to anyone if you don't designate who is left to. And when you do that, then you're open to predatory people who come in and steal your deeds from you. Respectfully, our current state representative is in court right now for deed fraud, fighting our own families from getting their homes, stealing them from them, and then fighting them in court so they can't get them back. We need to stop that immediately. The way that we do it is we fight the tangled title problem. We educate our constituents on getting a will so that no one like this can come along and take your family's property because you have not properly prepared your family to receive your property. That is what we fight for on the state level. It's education.
Around housing, and I thought that was a really awesome question, because understanding when we have these properties and about our seniors. So a lot of times our properties are already falling apart, and we have so many. So I believe that an important piece of legislation to start to be considered is how these programs and systems and repair opportunities are set up so that it goes by your gross, right? Nothing goes by your net. So when you have your water bill and things like that, as your house is falling apart, and you need to be able to get in programs, you could be knocked out because you make $1 or 50 cents too much. And some legislation looks at how do we get these systems and resources available to people that they can save their houses and they're not set up to lose them. Another thing is when we talk about that tax that people have to do to transfer a house over, a lot of families just don't have that kind of money. So investing in resources and programs that provide maybe some subsidy or allowances for people to move that house along so it doesn't get taken by a predatory builder or developer would be a wonderful thing to invest in. The program that State Senator Nikhil Saval, who actually has endorsed me, just released March 21st, saying that there's going to be a lot of investment, up to $50,000, for repairs for families that people will be able to benefit and save their homes so that they can even transfer them over to the next generation, that they're livable, because it's a lot of barriers that already are in place that people can't even figure out how to even enter into going down and paying money to get this house so that we can save it.
Just want to correct the record. The case that Ms. Blackwell just referenced was from 2013 when I was a victim, when someone sold me a house and it wasn't the person, and that person got their house back after it was brought to our attention. So there is no open case. I have no open cases. So thank you. I wanted to make that very clear. So this, the homelessness. The city of Philadelphia is the largest landowner in the state of Pennsylvania. We have vacant lots and abandoned buildings all over the place. And we have the highest percentage of homelessness. You can go on any street and find someone sleeping on the sidewalk. I'm a heavy believer in public and private partnerships. If the state of Pennsylvania in the last 10 years have been investing less and less and less every single year in affordable housing, the federal government also haven't been investing in affordable housing or low-income housing. So when you have a heart problem, you go to a heart doctor. You don't go to urgent care. So if we have a housing problem, we need this local government or the city or the state need to sit down with builders. You sit down with professionals, people who build homes. So public-private partnerships. The city come in with the land, the professionals come in and build. That's how you end homelessness in the city of Philadelphia. It don't seem that difficult. There's conversations around that right now. You got Councilman Jones working on something heavy, right, sir? He's working hard for the people. And then the property, the inheritance tax. Do I think that will help us? I think that it will help families keep their homes. Thank you.
Senator Williams. Senator Williams.
Okay, thank you. Certainly changing the inheritance tax would be helpful, but the reality is it's not going to change. Republicans control the General Assembly and the Senate and in the House. That's not going to change in the next election cycle. So what can we do? Philadelphia is significantly developed across the city of Philadelphia. The term is called gentrification. The balance is not so much that we don't want people to move in. The question is, why are we forcing people to move out? And so what we have to do is a couple things. One, we have to increase the homestead portion of the money that offsets the taxes so people who are seniors and want to pass along can do so to their children. We're going to do that in this next budget because we have more money than we've ever spent before. The second part, though, is frankly, Philadelphia is developed primarily about this thing called a tax credit. Philadelphia depends heavily upon subsidized housing, be it private, University Penn housing, wherever it is, depends upon that tax credit. That tax credit should come with strings. There should be a balance. That means today, we are developing property that none of us can afford, including me, to live in. What should happen is, and by the way, the city sends up these applications, private developers send them out to Harrisburg. What should happen is, we should say that 60% of the housing going forward now is going to be for modest, working class, and low-income folks, of which everyone in here will qualify for, including me. Those things we actually can do without, frankly, legislation occurring. We can do them by policy and by direction. That is what we are working on as we speak today. Thank you.
Right now, we have a mode of development where developers are allowed to do whatever they want and act however they want and displace people. And we need elected officials, not just on the policy angle, that are going to be proactive and say, before development happens, when we know it's coming, to force the developers to come to the table with the communities they're in and hammer out community benefits agreements that actually benefit people and don't displace people. But again, it requires actually a proactive approach, because right now I don't see anyone doing that. We're just letting it happen and nothing's happening. And I think beyond that, there are other things like right now the rent rebate program for seniors. The eligibility is way too limited. We need to expand that so seniors can actually stay in their home when development is taking place, and more money at the state level for affordable housing. And I think one thing we shouldn't lose sight of is this, for me, is also a living wage job issue. If you have a living wage job, if you can guarantee on cost of living increases, you would be able to withstand if there is development happening, if there is a modest increase in housing prices, you would be able to withstand that if you have living wage jobs. I think we can't forget about that in this conversation. But broadly speaking, we need to stand up to developers. And it's not about saying that we don't want any development, we don't want anything to change, but right now we're just letting them do whatever we want. And besides policy, we need someone that's actually going to be willing to take a stand against them.
Thank you. So now we're going to have the wrap up. So each candidate will be able to wrap up, summarize, share your heart's content based on anything that has been said this evening, so you can respond to statements that have been made. And basically this is your elevator pitch. So sell us on you. All right? I always say I pastor the best church in the city of Philadelphia. And every Sunday, I'll say, I pray for elected officials. I pray for elected officials that they understand that at the end of every decision is a human life. Not about y'all posturing or whatever. I mean, some of you I know personally, some I've just met today. So sell us on you in your wrap up. And we'll go in this order. Blackwell, Green, Brown, Williams, and I'm just following the order that was given me. All right, so I don't want y'all to don't come say somebody got. So don't do that. Don't do that. All right. So Blackwell, Green, Brown, Williams, Prescott, and we'll probably allow y'all a few more minutes to sell us.
Okay. Again, thank you. I want to give an honor to God, an honor to my husband, Thomas Blackwell VI, and my family for joining us, my mother and my partners as well. And the Honorable Grandmother Janie Blackwell, who is also here with us today. I currently, yes, my team currently also, we have a nonprofit that works with our young people. One thing that people don't talk about is the crisis of gun violence, right? It's there, it's a street culture. And our young people wake up to a music that perpetuates this street culture. You know, bang, bang, shoot 'em up. They wake up to it, they go to bed to it, and the music, right? So what we do is we challenge our young people to change the culture on purpose. So we know that we need our young people to make different music. If they were to make clean music that doesn't celebrate gun violence, and they were to spread that music throughout the community, then something else will be popular. Not shooting people will be popular. And what we do right now is we offer our young people a safe space to create that music and to share that music. We also pay them $500 every night that we have this competition to create clean music that does not celebrate gun violence. That's what we're doing right now to affect change right now with our young people. Again, we currently feed over 2,000 families right now on 52nd and Locust. You can join us every other Saturday where we give out food, because most people have stopped giving out food because the pandemic is quote unquote over. But we know that our community is still poor and still in need. So we continue that need. Again, I will need to say that it's not about community policing, it's about community patrolling, community involvement. That is why, I'll say again, with the Town Watch integrated systems, we have the only active Town Watch patrol in the city of Philadelphia, but especially in West Philadelphia. We talk to the shooters, we talk to the victims, we talk to the neighbors, and we bring them together. We provide real resources, paid job trainings. I'm talking about $32 an hour welding classes, money to get them change their mind from being on the streets. We talk to them. That's how we learn what they need. When it comes to being actionary in our community, that's what I'm doing right now. And that's what I will continue to do for you in Harrisburg. Last, I am your sister in community. You can call me anytime you need me. Where you might not be able to get to some of our elected officials on the phone, you can get to me. 484-775-0772. That's been my number for the last 20 years and will not change when I get to Harrisburg. So I'm asking you to vote Blackwell on May 17th for real change. But you know the legacy, and we will continue that legacy. But while you're at it, take out your phone and Google Almond Brown and deed fraud. The judge made him give back that property.
When you give me the notification, I'm just giving just a few moments.
I'm gonna move around like Purple just did. How about that? Yeah. So, yeah, my name is Cass Green, and I just want to tell you a little bit about myself. I come from Newark, New Jersey. And if anybody knows Newark, New Jersey, it's called Brick City. And I grew up in Newark right after the riots, where I saw despair, I saw hopelessness, I saw destruction. And how I landed in Philly was because when I had my first daughter, who will be having a birthday on Mother's Day, my cousin told me that you got to get out of here because there's no hope for you to do better here with your daughter. And so I came to Philly for a better life. And I have to admit that I've had a better life since I've been in Philadelphia. I had opportunities. I have a village. I have learned. I had people pour into me. I've been blessed out, exceedingly abundantly more than I could have ever dreamed or imagined. So when I think about going to Harrisburg and moving into this space, which I'm totally comfortable now and being uncomfortable, it's because I've seen what God can do, but I also seen what the village can do in working together. I have evidence. I also am a project manager who work under the basis of evidence-based solutions and impact. And I've seen it. I've seen it in our youth. I've seen it in our community. I see what happens when we work together. I've seen what happens when we don't work together. And I believe that us, whether today, whether we lose or win, that if we don't work together, nothing's going to change. When we talk about our schools, we could put money in, we could fix up the building, we could give them no books, but if we don't instill a sense of hope and pride and empathy and love when they're little so that they don't grow up and pick up those spirits that have them turning on each other, it's not going to happen. If we don't, as adults and grown people, emulate and provide examples for our children to emulate, nothing's going to happen. If we don't invest in our own community first and take our money and spend it in our neighborhoods opposed to going out to the malls, nothing's going to happen. So I'm just here today to say that running for me is about the village. I would prefer to be in the background, but God said go front, so I'm being obedient, and that's all I can do.
I grew up, I attended St. Matthew AME Church right across the street. I used to be jealous of Mount Carmel because y'all used to take all the parking spots. But I used to sneak over for the breakfast. But for those who know me, I'm the same little Amin. I'm little Amin that went to the store for you. I'm little Amin that shoveled your snow. I'm little Amin that made sure you were good. I'm that same guy today with that same heart. I stand here as a 34-year-old black man. Thank you. And we all know it is not easy being a young black man in the city of Philadelphia, let alone being a young black man in Harrisburg. Harrisburg is not for everybody. If you're not willing to cross the aisle and do what's right for your community, the people that look like you, and ignore the people that don't look like you telling you what's best for your community, then you shouldn't be trying to go to Harrisburg. Senator Hughes said it earlier. This is a West Philly seat. I attended Hamilton Elementary, West Philadelphia, Sarah Middle School, West Philadelphia, Overbrook High School, West Philadelphia. I am West Philadelphia. I am you. I'm your grandson. I'm your son. I am your community servant. And no matter what anybody say, y'all know me. My heart is pure. And I want to clear the record from my mandatory minimum bill because it's being said that the worst thing about a legislator is that they don't read the language. The language in my proposed legislation, which I personally myself pulled it. No one told me to do it. I am a strong black man. Can't nobody tell me what to do. It don't work like that. The mandatory was a 2-year minimum for repeat offenders of violent crime that involve firearm offenses only. Repeat shooters, attempted murders, and murders with a 5-year look back. That's what my legislation was. And you want to know where that came from? The same little woman who got shot from a repeat offender of violent crime. That legislation is coming from all of my constituents who can't sit on their porches or patronize the local small businesses that we want to support. That's where it came from. So, May 17th, vote for Little Amin. Your Little Amin. Thank you.
I feel like I'm at the Apollo Theater. I don't want to get Sandman, though. Look, your pastor said, sell you. I can't. I'm not even going to try to sell you. What I can tell you is who authentically I am and that I got a lot of work to do. let's be very clear. Another generation is arriving on the scene politically, and they should. Kenyatta Johnson, supported him, worked for me. Jordan Harris, the whip of the caucus, worked for me, supported him. Joanna McClinton, the only African-American woman to ever become the Democratic leader, worked for me. Regina Young, so I believe in the next generation. I just believe that the narrative that I keep hearing about lately is just not true. Yes, we got problems, but be very clear. I could not stand in front of you today if my community, this church, didn't support a person like me. Earlier, somebody texted me and said, Tony, you said a cuss word in the church. I said, no, I didn't. I looked down and I said, yes, I did. I'm sorry, Pastor. But I want you to understand something. I'm frustrated. I want you to understand, I'm very frustrated. We stand here tonight. The enemy is in November, not now in a primary. I'm a Democrat and a proud Democrat. And by the way, I've delivered as a Democrat in spite of the fact that some Democrats overlook our communities. They show up on election day, then they leave. That ain't me. I'm in the hood. $45 million to the hood ain't nothing to sneeze at. An illegal gun task force, which they never thought about, ain't nothing to sneeze at. Hillco, which is a refinery which will have jobs for black folks, ain't nothing to sneeze at. To take on the trades is nothing to sneeze at. The reality is that you have elected someone who knows their job, knows their place, knows where they come from, and is never going to leave. This is not an election cycle for me. This is not an event. This is not a campaign speech. This is not a moment. This is about the passion that I feel every time I see someone who has to bury a baby in Southwest Philadelphia because we have not done enough in terms of resources for schools, healthcare, jobs, quality of life in this process. And so for me, as a member of 250 folks, I ain't gonna lay down. I'm not gonna lay down for a new narrative of folks who just arrived and said, you know what, move out the way because we're gonna take over, with all due respect. That ain't happening. And most importantly, those I work with, they're gonna have to continue to respect Southwest Philadelphia. Vince said something, and I'm gonna close on this. He said presidents have been here before, right? The reason why presidents have been here in Southwest Philadelphia is because black people, black women are the most loyal, Democratic base of the party ever delivered, right? And when you look at my body of work, whether it be a clinic for maternal health care in a neighborhood that doesn't have it, or when you look at it for salaries in terms of fighting for real living wages, or when you see them be providing safety, I know where and who I come from. It's you. God bless you.
So before I ran for office, I taught high school social studies to 9th graders and 10th graders. And what really strikes me about youth now, and I think this new generation coming up, is just how scared they are about the future. And we know adolescents, there's a lot of angst there, but just how truly scared they are about the future that they are stepping into. I mean, they see crisis all around them, whether it's gun violence, or knowing they can't afford college anymore, seeing that the good jobs are leaving them everywhere. This is what they see. And, you know, young people are supposed to be full of hope, but it's very hard for, you know, anyone, but even young people to feel hope right now. And we can't, I mean, what is the definition of insanity? We can't continue to do the same things, keep going down a path we know has not been working, elect the same people, and expect a different result. And this campaign is about public investment, investing in the basics, because like I said before, when people have their needs met, you're going to see a change in behavior, you're going to see a change in outcomes. Whether it's fully funded schools, good jobs, housing, healthcare, that is what this campaign is about ultimately. And I think, you know, it's easy enough for all of us to make a speech and posture. We couldn't make a speech, we wouldn't be in this position right now. But I think the most important question to ask about a candidate is what were they doing before they ran for office, before they even got the idea in their head. And I'm someone that's always been standing on picket lines, fighting for good schools, fighting for good union jobs, fighting for more investment. And this is why in this campaign, you know, I don't come from a political dynasty. I don't come from wealth. Again, I was teaching before this. But because of my history and what I've been doing, this is why we've assembled such a broad coalition in this campaign. You know, I'm endorsed by unions representing UPS drivers, postal workers, sanitation workers, teachers. The backbone of the middle class in the city is supporting this campaign, along with organizations working on decarceration, ending the school-to-prison pipeline. All kinds of people from different backgrounds are uniting around this campaign because they know it is time for change. And what has been happening, we've had too long to give people a chance to see what is happening and to see if they can deliver. And right now, if you are in the 8th Senate District, you have to ask yourself 2 very hard questions. Over the past 30 years, few decades, has life been getting better or worse? Especially when you think about the next generation. Have we really been seeing, outside of the first competitive election, the kind of active fighting leadership that we need that's going to get the job done? And I think the answer to those questions is no, and it is time for a change, and it's time to invest in hope and people again. Thank you.
I would like to thank each and every one of you for taking time out of your schedule to come and have just a pretty candid conversation on matters that are of significance to everyone not only in the room, but those who are watching virtually and those throughout the city of Philadelphia. I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge, I know we acknowledge Councilwoman, retired Councilwoman Janie Blackwell and her attendance here, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention the attendance of my friend, my sister, Movita Johnson-Harrell, that's here. Also, Councilman Jones, would you like to say anything, or no, you good? I'm sorry, Councilman.
I don't need a mic. I want to thank Mount Carmel, the mighty Mount Carmel, for doing this today. I want to thank each and every one of you for stepping up to the plate, putting yourselves as in front of the public to say that offer your candidacy to help. But I'm going to tell you this. I can't do, I listen intently to every answer. I can't do this alone without the cooperation of the state. They write bigger checks. And we need those kinds of partnerships to make this community better. Mount Carmel, thank you. Pastor Moore, thank you.
Thank you. Now, but before we leave, because like I said, I want to be fair. Anyone who knows me, I go to great lengths to make sure I'm being fair to everyone. And what is there a Michael Cobb? Just keep walking. So you can remove your mask.
Yes, sir.
So Michael Cogbill is running for the 3rd Congressional District.
Yes.
So I will present to you the same question that I presented to, it wasn't even a question, to comment on. Voters' rights. So Mr. Cogbill is running for the 3rd Congressional District seat. And can you speak to voters' rights and what does that mean in this election?
Yeah, it's super important. Our voting rights that's our last line of defense. John Lewis said the right to vote is the most powerful tool we have. On the federal level, I want to get H.R. 4 passed. That's the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. That's how they suppress us. Suppressing our vote has a lot to do with white supremacy, us not being able to vote for the right legislators who fund our schools. That has a lot to do with white supremacy. But yeah, that's our most powerful tool, y'all. And I'm fighting hard to get H.R. 4 passed. We have to make Election Day a holiday on the federal level. But legitimately, we should get the day off. It should be a paid holiday. But we have to liberate our vote. This is all we have, y'all. It's the only thing we have. We don't have big dollars to donate towards campaigns. We don't have a lot of people to help knock on the doors. All we have is this one vote, y'all. And I'm gonna make sure don't nobody take that away from us in Washington. I'm gonna fight hard. Pastor, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm an organizer, I'm an activist, I'm a problem solver. I worked at the AFL-CIO. I served as the PAC chair of the NAACP here in Pennsylvania. I'm ready to fight. I was raised by a single mom, so you better believe I know how to fight. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor.
So can we give a hand to all of the candidates who came out this evening? And just so I'm clear, we don't endorse anyone here. So as the candidates are leaving, you all can talk to them. They can talk to you, but we won't congregate in the sanctuary. Amen? Amen.